Hello everybody and welcome back to Live with Roger Hanson. Today I am doing my live stream again. I apparently hit the wrong button. I stopped streaming instead of started recording, so I apologize about that. And I am back on. I believe that X and Twitch is still recording, so they've got all of my mistakes without any faltering. You guys have the deep dark secret of a guy who's streaming and screwed up. So let me go ahead and get things kicked off and started. Now, like I said before, I am currently working on getting my things taken care of. I've backed off of live streaming. If you've noticed, I've only been doing it for one or streaming live once a week, and the reason why I'm doing that is I'm taking a break from doing live streams and working on my channels, as well as working with Minds Gaming, Bob Dub, and Within the Vacuum on Mint Me, and figuring all that out. Now, I was saying, and people on Twitch and X will probably hear me again say it again, but I am working on, or I have figured out how to get my tokens off of Mint Me, their platform, and into my wallet, but at the moment I haven't figured out how to do any kind of converting tokens. You know what I mean? There's no way of converting them over to other currencies and stuff like that yet, so I'm still working on it, trying to figure it out. But that's the kind of thing I'm doing with Mint Me, and I started doing that with Minds Gaming and Bob Dub and Within the Vacuum, and they've been helping me with figuring out how to get everything onto the to my wallet, and that is MetaMask. I've got it hooked up to where the WoW token that I created is able to go on to my MetaMask as well. I can send my Mint Me tokens to MetaMask as well, so that's how I'm doing that. Other than that, I haven't been trying it with Uniswap or anything of that nature. Now, with MetaMask as well, a good thing to point out is, or not MetaMask, but Mint Me, Bob Dub has been working with Minds Gaming to where he is able to, or where they've able to set up, they were able to set up tutorials so that if anybody wants to transfer their tokens off of the platform onto their MetaMask wallet, they can do it. If you can't, or if you go on my channel that I have called Wonderful World of Weirdness, in the community section I've been posting links to their videos that they've been doing about it. It's tutorials that'll guide you through it. Now you can find Bob Dub on X for Bob Dub on Minds, or you can find her on Minds.com. You can also find her on YouTube. She has her own channel there as well. She's got one on Rumble, and you can find her there, but the best way to find her is on YouTube under Bob Dub. Now you can also get in touch with Minds Gaming directly too if you want to. He's on Minds.com. He goes, he's got Minds Underground, and he also has the Imaginarium, something Imaginarium. They've always got these weird names. Everybody on Minds does. I'm pulling it up right now. Infinite Imaginarium. That's what it's called. You can find him there on Minds Chat. So that's a good way of getting in touch with them and trying to get things sorted out. Now, other than the Mint Me, I've also been working on setting up new uh, graphics and things of that nature with Blender. Been going through doing some animations. I finally was able to do the marble floor that I wanted to do for Bob Dub. She's got a glitch account and she's trying to make a VR kind of room with a marble floor and all of her NFTs is what she's wanting to create of her portraits and stuff. So she's got that going on. I've been I did the marble floors. I'm also trying to help with setting up Dude Where's My Wallet's lounge, as well as their house or apartment. So those are two things that are in process, and I've been doing the coding for that, which I'm not really happy about talking about code, but I've been doing a little bit more coding, getting into frickin' Blender, doing some Blender there. I've also done like that emblem that's right there in the middle of the screen. That's something I've done. As a matter of fact, all of that is something that I've done. So I've done that with Blender, making my own animations and stuff. Well, I finally got into it, set up some new introductions, intros and outros and background videos, played around with some audio visualization so that when I do my streams you can see my voice with waveform, and I've got that in process now. I've gone through and I started working on old channels that I had on YouTube that I'm getting back into shape, putting content on it. One is one that I stopped using a long time ago, but I figured I would give it a go. I've come up with a different concept for it. It's called Earth. Years and years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, I was doing gardening videos on there. So if you guys do go on there, please do not look at those videos. They are horrible. They involve me gardening, and you do not want to see Roger Hanson gardening. Okay, trust me. So that's what I'm doing there. Now with this one, I am coming at it from, well, see, what it was is I have another channel called The Praetorian, where at first it was supposed to be about politics, and eventually a lot of the stuff happened with politics to where I basically got disgusted by it and didn't want anything to do with it. So I tried to stop doing politics on that channel, and I got into science and history, philosophy, and things of that nature, because those are things that I like to do, if you haven't noticed, you know. So I kept on trying to do that for a few years, and here in the last year I got back into talking about political history and politics and things of that nature with Mark Edworthy, and that ended up having me come across this stuff, where I decided I'm going to open up Earth, and instead of putting the ancient history and the science stuff on the Praetorian, I'm going to put it on Earth. So I'm going to have my gardening videos with ancient history and science, as well as another series that I'm putting out that has to do with some of the stuff me and Bob Dub covered on my channel that had to do with duality, and that series is called Hummingbirds and Bumblebees, and I've started on that. So I've got the first 2 episodes set up for that, as well as the first 2 episodes for ancient history. besides doing Earth, I'm also starting up my storyteller channel again, which I was doing last year. And this is going to be short stories. I'm also going to go over a writer who is who's written a book. I'm going to do a narration of his book. It's John G. from Minds.com, and he he ended up putting out a cool book that he allowed me to do a narration on, and that book is called the Wall House Curse, I believe is the name of it. But yeah, let me get, yeah, it's called the Wall House Curse. The wall as in WAHL house curse. I've been going through it and getting it set up, so far it's looking pretty decent. I've got the first episode that's already been published. It's on YouTube, and if you guys want to watch it, just check it out. It's on the Storyteller. If you want to find it, just go into my channel's description. I believe it's on the bottom part of it, the on my timeline thing, whatever, down below where it shows other channels that I support. It's on there. If not, I'll be posting it. If you see it, click on it and watch it. So because I post all the time. Here lately, I've been posting on MintMe as well as X. All my stuff is also going up on Rumble. Here lately, I haven't been doing any posts whatsoever on Odyssey, but I have been doing my live streams on here, so I can get back to that later on, but at the moment I just want to get my videos onto Rumble and onto X, and that's been a job and a half. So that is where I have been going with Blender lately. I've got a lot of good stuff coming up. I've done the background for Earth as well as the Storyteller, where it's set up in podcast format basically. Some of it has slideshows, some of it has animations, but it also has the waveform to where when the stories or when somebody's talking, you'll see the waveform for their voice as it appears. So it's pretty cool. I think it is. And on Earth, I created a holographic Earth that rotates. Now on that one, I did it to where the Earth doesn't just rotate in a circular motion, because the Earth doesn't really rotate like that, you know what I mean? So I put an actual rotation on it to where you'll see it rotating. I thought that was pretty cool too, so that's what I've been doing. Now also I went through and I did some stuff with PermaWeb, and I also had an episode where I was showing off my chat. Now I've put a hold on the chat because I'm having issues now being able to use the apps that are involved with it, with Element. So I'm going through and working with Mark Edworthy and Tan. We're trying to get some stuff worked out on that, try to get it up and going. But the chats are still there, it's just they're not public, and that's because it's not ready. Once it's ready, we'll open it up to the public. I do want to eventually be able to use that when it comes to getting my people, or getting my streams up and going, you know what I mean, to where if people want to make a comment or something in the chats, they can just go in there and chat it out, and I can answer them if I need to. So those are some of the stuff that I have going on, and with that being said, I guess I can get started with the outline that I wanted to present. I covered about 20 minutes of that, plus messing up on my recording slash stream. Thank goodness I caught on to that, or I would have been running around with my head like a chicken with my head cut off, or sitting in here talking and not realizing that my stream wasn't even videotaping, so it could have been a nightmare. But anyhow, let me double check. Everything seems to be up and going. So first thing I want to talk about is the gaming part. I've actually been doing 3 games at the moment, and for anybody who sees me gaming, they know how I usually do it. My gaming is basically kind of like my live streams. It's a variety. It's kind of like variety gaming, and I do let's plays and stuff of that nature. But what I usually do is I take 3 games and I'll stream 10 videos of each game at the same, 10 of this game, and then switch to the next one, do 10 of that game, and then switch to the third one, the last one, and do 10 of them. And then I'll go back to the first one and I'll do 10 of them, and then onward, and then the third time. And I call them rounds, where I do them in the rounds. So what I usually do is that, and the first 3 games that I started on was Doom, and then I ended up doing For Honor as well as Assassin's Creed Unity. Now, what I want to do is I want to go through and I want to talk to you guys about these games and what I enjoyed about them and what I didn't enjoy about them, so that and just basically things that you need to watch out for with them, because especially with Doom was the one that I really do need to give people warnings about on that game. Now, Doom, when you go in there and they have the recommended settings, this is what you need to know. Okay, at the beginning of the game, they tell you to adjust the name Doom to where it's just barely visible. Now, it's fine if you want to do that, okay, but be prepared for it to be extremely dark if you do that. It'd be hard to see things. Now, a lot of people who get on streaming, they always turn that up so that people can see the streams and stuff. But for me, what happened for me is I went according to the recommendations and I made it barely visible and everything was dark. And I was fine with that until it started getting complicated and it started getting hard. And I kept having the urge to switch it back, and start over with the brightness up. But for me, as I kept playing it, it started feeling like if I did that, it would be like a cop-out, because this is the recommended settings that the game suggests, So basically with that game, for my gameplay in it, I kept it at the recommended settings, and the game was really dark, okay? Now, that's the thing I just wanted to warn everybody about. If you don't want to play that game in a really, really dark environment, then don't follow the recommended settings when it comes to that, because if you do, it's going to be real dark and hard to see. So, with that being in mind, I also want to bring up things like about the map. Okay, now the map on this game is cool, but it's something that you also have to get used to, like navigating on the map and trying to figure out where you're at. That's something that you have to do. You have to get used to using it, especially if you go according to the recommended settings and everything's dark, because you're going to get lost real easy. And there's things that you're going to have to be able to do, like go through corridors that are real low and things of that nature. I actually had to go on and watch another person's tutorial in order to find out a few things because it was so dark in the game that I couldn't freaking tell what I needed to do, like the little crawl space that I had to jump up to instead of bend down and go through, you know. I didn't know where that was, so I did it twice, and you know I'm okay with it. It's just, you know, I'm an older player. I'm like 51, and back whenever I started playing games, you just didn't do stuff like that. You know, that was cheating. It's more acceptable now than what it used to be. Is all I've got to say. So, but you know, that's just me. Don't listen to me. I'm just running my mouth. You know. But anyhow, um, the map is pretty cool though. It's really, I was really impressed with this game because I remember the original game, and this game made me made me feel really good because not too many of the older games that I've played have, the newer games that they've remade for them haven't really stood up compared to the older ones. You know what I'm saying? But this one did. It made me feel real good about it. Now, with the game being so dark when I was playing it, I do have to say that the Foundry became a bit confusing. Um, but the darkness, like I said, had a lot to do with that. Um, I ended up getting lost, not being able to figure out what I needed to do, and that was because of that little crawl space I was telling you about. I had to jump up into that to this crawl space that was up high in the air, and I didn't even know it was there. I couldn't see it because it was too dark. And I had a lot of issues with that when I was going through and playing the game because it was really, really dark and it was hard to see things. I even had a few comments about it, but I explained it to him, you know, look, it's the recommended settings. This is what the game suggested I set it at, and that's why it ended up happening, you know. So, besides that, they also, you know, mentioned it in the comments about the whole darkness thing and how was I able to actually fight and stuff. And it's a completely different experience than what I've seen other people play with it being lit up, you know, because you see your enemies when the room's all lit up. You don't have to worry about it, but like when it's dark, they're creeping around you and it's hard to see them, so you have to literally find out where they're at and kill them, and you can't sit still, you know what I mean? So you do have to fight them and figure out where they're at and make sure that you're in a safe spot to where you don't get attacked from behind and things of that nature. I thought that was interesting there, and I guess with it lit up, it would take away that aspect, you know. So in that point of view, I can see why it would be better to have it dark instead of lit up, because then you're taking away from the game if it's lit up and you can see where all the enemies are. So now another thing I do want to say that I was really impressed with, and I love this, this game had an effective punch. Now with punching and using like pistols and stuff like that, in most games pistols aren't worth shit. There's very few games that I've played where pistols are actually worth having. Now I'll say it on here. Their little ray gun, that was completely worthless. The gun that you got when you first started, it's just a piece of crap, not worth using. But the punch, the actual walking up and punching demons, was very effective. I found that more useful in the game than I did any of the weapons. Okay, it's very effective, very useful, and it was refreshing for me to actually play a game where the punch was more important than actually using an automatic weapon. You know what I mean? Um, so that was pretty cool. You know, I like games where they let you use like a smaller weapon and it's really, really good. So that's one thing that I do want to mention. Now, the ammunition on this game is very, very limited too. Like, you're not going to always have the amount of ammunition that you need, so that's where the punching would be really important. Figure out how to do the punching and get it down pat, because you're going to run out of ammunition. You'll get ammunition. It's everywhere, you know what I mean? And besides that, but when you, I noticed too, like, whenever you shoot an enemy, the stuff that drops out of them isn't as abundant as if you go up and you knock them out with your fist. When you knock them out of your fist, health and everything comes falling out of their body, and it goes into you and it heals you and stuff of that nature. So when I was able to punch, that would happen and I would get healed. So while I'm getting ambushed and hit by all these other aliens, I'm getting health put back into me at the same time, which was very helpful. But just be aware, ammunition is very limited. So what I ended up doing is I ended up being more dependent on my punches and less dependent on using my weapons. Now, as time went by, I learned to use them in combination and be a little bit more conservative when it comes to shooting my guns. I thought that was pretty good how that worked out. Now, the chainsaw on there is cool as hell, but I'll tell you right now, one thing, it's very important for some of the people that you fight in this game. So don't just go around sawing people up. You know what I mean? Pick your fights when it comes to using that chainsaw, because there's stronger enemies that you're going to have to kill, and then that chainsaw is going to be perfect for just slashing into them and cutting them in half. Just right down the middle. Saw them right down the middle and laugh about it. You know, it's you just do that, and you just take care of that, and everything will be perfectly fine. So the thing I had to learn was to hold off on that chainsaw until you had to work with or you came across these enemies and used it on them, because chainsaws they can barely or rarely be used because they run out of fuel like after one use, and after that there is no more using it until like you get to another point in the game. I guess I wasn't really for sure if like they had fuel that refueled it or what, you know what I mean? It's just at some points it worked, at some points it didn't. But that is what I ended up having to do with the chainsaw. Just be very careful. Make sure you use that chainsaw on strong enemies. Don't just use it on any of the enemies you go up against. Overall, I'd have to say that I really did enjoy this game. I enjoyed that new Doom like you wouldn't believe. It's really a fun game. My son ended up giving it to me 2 years ago on my birthday, and it took until just recently before I could actually get into it and play it, because I was backlogged on games that I needed to play and catch up to. But when I finally did play it, I gotta admit, man, he was right on the nose about it. He thought I'd love it, and I did. I loved it. It's a pretty good game. He also recommended Metro to me, and I played that, and it turned out to be a real good game. So I've got to admit, he's got good taste in video games. That is the truth about it. At least the ones I've played so far, they've been pretty good. So with that, I am going to go to my second game, and that second game was For Honor. Okay. Now that game was that game was all right too, but it wasn't as good as what I had expected it to be. You know, I remember when For Honor first came out, and from the time it first came out until now, or until I finally played the game. I wanted to play that game, and I never got a chance to do it. Um, and I finally got to play the game, and my expectations of it, I guess, weren't or were higher than what they really should have been. And I've always had an issue with setting expectations because of this. I don't like to set expectations because you end up getting disappointed by it, and the outcome usually isn't all that great. But you know, um, this game, like I said, it was alright, but it wasn't as good as what I expected it to be. The storyline to me seemed like it was too short. There's three separate storylines. One for the samurai, one for the Nordic, and then one for the knights. And they're not very long, so I really thought that was something that could have been worked on, because it was just a little bit too much. So um, I did think that the storyline seemed too short. Now, another thing that seemed to irk me about the game that I really thought could have been done better was the character creation. Hold on a minute. I'll be right back. Alright, I am back. So, I ended up having an issue that took place, and I ended up uh, having to take care of it real quick. But, like I said, the game was alright, but it wasn't what I expected. The storyline seemed too short for Honor. They could have put more into it than what they did, is what I believe. Um, Also, the game didn't have a character creation option either. You would think for a fighting game where it's multiple people fighting against one another, they would have the option to where you could create your own character, but that wasn't a part of it. It was bad enough that my controller ended up screwing up, and I had to learn how to do all of the combinations and fighting and everything with a keyboard and a mouse, but um, they didn't give you the option to even create your own characters and everything. They were all built in characters that you had to select from, which was, I've had to put up with that before, but at least there was a lot of varieties of characters that you could use, and I didn't find that with this game very much. So that was something that I did have an issue with. I think they could have done a lot better when it came to that, to be honest. But like I said, I mean, it wasn't a bad game. It really wasn't. It was an alright game. It's just not what I expected it to be. I expected it to be a lot better. I expected to go into like this multiplayer game where freaking people are on a battlefield and fighting with swords and stuff, because they're fighting. The way you fight on that is really cool, because like if another player swings to the left, you have to block that swing by guarding to the left. You know what I mean? And shifting to the right and up and down and all that. So it's very, very technical. And that's the thing I really wanted to get out of that, was the technical fighting aspect of it all, which it did have. It was very cool. I thought that was great. And that's why I said that it wasn't a bad game at all. And they also had a duel part where one-on-one you could go in and battle one person at a time, one-on-one, instead of being in a group meeting. I thought that was really, really cool. So that was something that I thought I would like. Another challenges, and it was mentioned in my comments too, where the challenge seemed kind of quick. And that was something that I did notice too. Like when you go through and you have to do these challenges, the obstacles that you go through aren't really all that hard. They're really easy, and to me it was more of doing them to build up on my character's points and his level up. You know what I mean? That's basically all it was. They weren't really hard to do or anything of that nature. Now the storylines did have hard times. I ended up having I'd say I had quite a few tough battles when it came to the storylines, but some of that had to do with me actually learning the game. Then I went from using a controller to literally having to or literally playing the game with my keyboard and my mouse. So I had to transition from working with a gamepad or a controller to doing just straight off the computer, So I had those things going on, but I ended up getting it down pat, and the game ended up doing pretty good. And like I said, it was a good game, but I think it could have done better. I really do believe that. So with that being said, I can go on to my third game. Now, the third game I did was Assassin's Creed Unity. The one thing I did like, which you can find this in pretty much all of the other Assassin's Creeds too, but the game allowed parkour and the ability to move quick, which that's basically every Assassin's Creed game that you ever play, you know what I mean? But that's the one thing I always have enjoyed about it. I enjoyed the parkour that you get out of it, and even though you're supposed to act stealthy in the game, I really never was stealthy. And if anybody who's ever watched me play video games can testify to, I'm not a stealthy gamer. Like, I don't run around being all stealthy and trying to sneak up on them. I do sometimes, don't get me wrong, okay? But it's not really a habit that I practice. I love killing them all. I'll go through and slash and grind, And that's just the way I've always been in these games. Don't get me wrong, I will try the stealth thing, but that's the thing that I really am. I'm a fighter when it comes to these games. So overall, it wasn't any different from the games I've played before, um, or from the game I played before with Assassin's Creed. Now, the one I played before this was the one with the pirates, and you could be on the ship, and you could jump over to the other ship and get in fights with them on there, and you could steal their ship and take it as your own and stuff. But it didn't have any of this in Unity, so uh, that was the only difference. But other than that, it was basically the same game, you know. Um, Now the fight scenes, they were good. The thing of it is for me though is maybe they're a little too good, you know, because I have a tendency of, like I said, not being stealthy and wanting to fight. So they have this thing with the fighting where if somebody's coming down on you with a sword, you can hit block and it'll frickin' block, or parry, and you can parry their attack and then frickin' attack them, you know. And I really love when I can do that, because then you can sit there and fight with them, and when they go to attack you, you just parry and bam, hit them, you know. I always love doing that, and sometimes I get carried away with it. I do like games of that nature. I've I haven't been able to play too many of them. I played Battle for Middle Earth, which I really liked. I've heard Batman, I believe it is. Batman does it, and a lot of the DC games do it, I guess. But Assassin's Creed does it as well, so that's the one thing I do like about it, was the parry option and being able to do that. I do like the stealth kills and things of that nature as well. Don't get me wrong, I do like doing those things. But like I said, I'm not really, that's not my priority. Like when I'm supposed to sneak, I usually don't even sneak. But yeah, out of all of it, I would have to say yes, I really did enjoy this game too. Now, as much as I like Doom, no, I didn't. I didn't like it as much as I did like Doom, but I really enjoyed playing Doom. It was a good game. For Honor, it was pretty intense at moments. There were times where I was freaking hyperventilating because the fights got so overwhelming and so. I would like to say that I got freaking to the point where I was tasting blood. You know what I mean? There were fights that were impossibly hard, and I don't know how I got through them, but I ended up doing it. So that one is a little bit tricky. But like I said, it wasn't what I had set my expectations for it to be. You know what I mean? So that could have been the expectation of playing the game compared to what the game ended up being. You know, so it's tough on that one. Maybe if I didn't set my standards high on that one, it would have turned out better. You know. So yeah, with that. Those were the 3 games that I'd played. Now I've got to come up with 3 more games that I want to play, and at the moment, earlier I was going to pull up my Steam and look at all the games that I had available and decide on the stream what it was that I was going to do, but I just didn't do it. So now I'm sitting here and I'm telling you that I have to come up with 3 more games, and I've got to do that, and I will have it. I don't have to play these games for, I'd say, about another, I'd say maybe 3.5 weeks. So within 3.5 weeks I need to have these games picked and at least started. So I'm ahead of schedule when it comes to my video games. I've got everything scheduled out on YouTube and ready to go. My live streams are going according to schedule as well, but because I've got other projects that I'm working on as well besides my video games, and I try to set everything up to a schedule like I'd mentioned before in one of my previous episodes. You know, everything's about scheduling and time management for me. So with that, um, the next thing I can bring up is I can do a little bit of a information thing for everybody. Rapid Glitch from Nostalgia Gaming Retro had me do some editing for him today and yesterday. Now, I wanted to let everybody know ahead of time that they are putting out Harry Potter, the old Harry Potter, and I ended up helping them edit their second and third video. I sent the last part of the third video today. So if anybody is into retro gaming, check out Nostalgia Gaming Retro on YouTube, and you can check out his cool Harry Potter videos. I've been doing some retro too. I've got them posting up. I've been doing really good with the Pokemon Gen 1 videos that I've been coming out with. A lot of people seem to like those. I ended up doing it differently than what I've seen most people do it. Most of them do the whole template with, you know, them playing Pokemon and stuff of that nature. But with me, what I ended up doing was setting going from one battle to the next, just battle after battle, no walking around or anything of that nature, and it seems to be working out pretty good. So I did that, and people seem to be watching it. So hopefully, well, I don't have to say hopefully. I know that they're doing good. I hope they enjoy it. You know. One thing I hate is getting bad comments, trolls, and all of that. It's horrible. It's just something I don't like getting. So now, I also do want to mention that Disney Magic Zach has finally come back from his vacation. He went back, I should say, because he came to the United States to Walt Disney in Florida, and he went back to England. He finished his vacation at Walt Disney World, his big dream to go see Cinderella Castle and hang out with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. I don't even know if he's part of Walt Disney World, but Mickey Mouse and all of those guys. So he is coming back. I watched his cooking video that he put out here recently, and I know that he is wanting to come out with new videos about his vacation. So here before long, he's going to be putting out videos concerning his vacation and all the stuff that he did and cool stuff like that. So if you guys are interested in finding out about his journey over here to the United States, because he's an English boy, check him out. It's Disney Magic Zach. Now, I also did a video a while back, or an interview a while back with Zach, and we did the interview with a couple of ladies from England as well, who have their own YouTube channel called Middle Age Magic. It was a really, really long interview, I can just say that much, and most of it was my fault because they started talking about food, and that's one thing you don't do with me. You do not start talking about food, because I can sit for hours and just listen to you talk, especially if you're female with a British accent. I mean, I'm sorry, hands down, you know, that's just the way it is. I'll turn to butter and listen to every word you have to say just because of your accent. And that's what they did. They started talking about Disney food and all that stuff, and it went on pretty long. So what I ended up doing is I ended up putting these videos on YouTube as well as on Rumble and X at 15-minute intervals. So I cut them down to 15-minute videos, and I published them there when I archived them, instead of having the full 3 or 4 hour long interview. Which, don't get me wrong, it was a long interview, but there were a lot of different topics that we had gotten into, so I was able to cut them down and make them into interesting conversation pieces at a 15-minute limit. You know what I mean? It's not all of them aren't 15 minutes, but they're close enough to where they're about 15 minutes apiece. So if they aren't, the next one will compensate for it. You know. So that's basically what I had there. Now, with my new streams, like I said, on the my new live streams that I have for the gaming, I've done 3 games, 10 videos at a time, and then start over. That's basically what I'm doing when it comes to my live stream. If anybody is actually watching those and is wondering what I'm doing, that's how I usually do it. I do 10 videos of this game, 10 videos of this game, then 10 videos of this game, and then I'll start back at the beginning and do the second set of them. So that'd be the 20 to 30, and so forth, or 10 to 20, and then 20 to 30. Because the reason why I do that is because I've noticed that people have a really, hold on. But yeah, I'm having some issues real quick. No, that I just wanted to explain that so that you guys understood what was going on. And now the another thing that I did want to bring up too was the fact that I mentioned Xbox 360, and I've been mentioning it for a while now, and I've been noticing that nobody has even mentioned hide or hair of it. That's one thing that really kind of interested me. I didn't understand that, so it seems odd to me that they closed down Xbox 360 and nobody has even brought it up. Like, it's not even mentioned. I think that's kind of strange, For me, Xbox 360 was a game console that I know a lot of people actually played. The older group for this new generation, especially, they played a lot of Xbox 360s, and nobody has even mentioned it. And I find that really, really odd that nobody's brought it up. I think that's kind of disturbing too. You know what I mean? Because you would think that would be something in the gaming community that a lot of people would be discussing, but it's not even being mentioned. I brought it up because I thought it was important, but apparently people are getting sick of Xbox 360. So I am basically going to stop talking about it no more. I guess it wasn't that big of a deal, not to anybody else but me, you know. But I did want to mention that I found it pretty odd that people just pretty much disregarded it like it wasn't even important, you know. So I don't know, you know, if you guys have any thoughts on that, kind of mention it, bring it up in the comment section because I do find that really, really strange that nobody even mentioned the fact that Xbox 360 got shut down like it did, you know. The fact that they were shutting it down, I could understand, you know. If they weren't making money or anything of that nature, then yeah, that makes sense. But the fact that it got shut down and nobody even brought it up as a conversation piece, you know, that is pretty strange. So that is the end of my gaming um, part. So what I'm gonna have to do, I'm having issues. I take care of my mom, and she's senile as hell, and she keeps coming in here trying to bug me while I'm in the middle of streaming. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put some music on here so I can get this straightened out on what's actually happening, and I will be back here in a little bit so that you guys so that I can get this stuff straightened out. So let me go ahead and switch this all over real quick, and we can put some music on for you guys, and I can be back here in a little bit so that you guys, or so that I can finish this show and get things going. But first I'm gonna have to find some music, and we will be back here in a minute. Be right back. Okay, I am back. I will go ahead and switch everything back over to my media source for the slideshow instead of the what we had on before. Now, for this next section, I am going to start getting into some politics. Now, I wanted to start talking about the DNC. Now, I figured I would wait until the DNC was over with and then kind of go over some stuff that I found interesting about this whole situation. Now, I also mentioned earlier about this debate that took place between Donald Trump and Biden before he dropped out of the race, okay? And how horrible it was. Now, this is something that I've noticed, and it is something that is the common theme in this election, okay? A lot of the stuff that's going on is basically useless. And I don't mean that to be hateful. All I'm saying is, like, nothing so far has freaking come out of any of this in any aspect that relates to politics whatsoever. And, here's a good example, like the Rolling Stones, for instance, okay? The Rolling Stones put out an article, and they were telling everybody about the DNC, okay? Now, you would think that these people would go in there and they would want to get the information, considering that the guy who is the journalist is his career involves political journalism. You know what I mean? And you would think that his first priority would be going in there and actually writing an article about what was going on at the DNC and all of the political topics that took place, but he didn't. Okay, all through this person's article, there was nothing but complaining about influencers getting priority at the DNC, because I guess they're a part of the media now. You know what I mean? They should all be responsible for getting their own credentials if they're at the DNC. You know, and this guy is literally writing this stuff down and putting it into an article. After complaining about influencers being allowed into the DNC and put up in, their little high places wherever they were, the complaining continues, talking about long lines on day one of the DNC's I guess it was 3 days, or how I believe it was, I'm not sure, but on the first day, just complaining about long lines. And then after the long lines, going on about this long lines this and long lines that, he continues to complain about the lack of access to media seats. And all the time that he's writing this article, it should have been about, this is the topics that were brought up, these are the speeches that were made, these were the issues. But instead, I read nothing but paragraphs on paragraphs of nothing but complaining about influencers and long lines and lack of access to media seats, and how snooty media journalists were complaining because they weren't allowed to make it to their or they didn't have access to their privileged media seats. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, so what took place at the DNC? Not one time in that entire article did I ever hear anything concerning, the DNC and what was actually being discussed. And this goes back to what I was talking about with that debate, okay? Now, it just seems to me that all of these issues that everybody's trying to say is so important rotates around transgender bathrooms and teaching sex education to a 6-year old. Which that is pretty serious, but to me, none of this should be in politics. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't have ever been introduced into any kind of law whatsoever. These aren't issues that the government should be regulating and taking care of. Okay, and I find it pretty bad that we have a government that's more worried about the social media and influencers and transgender bathrooms and all of this crazy shit, and they're not worried about the more important things, like freaking the economy, building infrastructure, things of that nature. Instead, they're worried about all these social issues that really shouldn't even be a part of the conversation, to be honest with you. And they always talk about that, I want to be a part of the conversation. I want to be a part of the conversation. Well, there's things that really shouldn't be in any conversation when it comes to politics, and these are some of the things that shouldn't be mentioned because, first of all, it's not the government's place to regulate this stuff. There shouldn't be laws like that put into place. You see what I mean? And that's the thing. That's the common theme that keeps going on. And it just keeps repeating itself. Which brings me to AP. Now I went to check out some of the stuff on AP concerning the protesters that was outside of the DNC, and the things that I learned there when it comes to all that was pretty interesting, because this kind of goes along with some of the stuff I've been talking about socialism, and it's also got something to do with something I've always been meaning to talk about, but for some reason I forget to mention it, or I forget to bring it up, and the one thing that really gets to me is this thing about lobbyists and special interest groups and the socialist movements that are going on. Now, I have issues with a lot of this stuff because I believe in the rights of the individual. That's the one thing that the United States has that pretty much all of these other countries don't have. In a lot of their constitutions, it didn't focus on the rights of the individual. It focused on rights, don't get me wrong, but they didn't really think that the individual was very important. And the United States Constitution was founded on that principle, the rights of the individual. And it seems to me that now the rights of the individual is being freaking taken away because of special interest groups and lobbyists and social organizations, and with this protest, okay, getting back to this protest, the thing that I noticed about it, well, first of all, the protesters outside of the DNC, they knocked down barriers, and they ended up freaking being, see, when I first heard about it, I thought that it was protesters that were having issues with a lot of different things, and come to find out it wasn't. These protesters were out there and they were protesting against the occupation of Gaza. And don't get me wrong, I'm not for Israel, and I'm not for the Palestine or the Hamas or anything like that at all. I think that people over in Gaza and Israel are victims. That not I hate calling people victims, but I believe that they're the ones who are suffering. I don't believe that their governments are. I don't believe that the people who are in charge are. I think it's the actual people. It's just like the people in Ukraine. The Ukrainians, the actual people, are the ones who are suffering from this. The government isn't, and the people who are creating this proxy war aren't suffering from it. It's the actual people. You know. So with that being said, let me continue with what I was saying. This is the DNC. This is supposed to be about the elections. This is about politics here in the United States, and yet these protesters are outside protesting against something that has absolutely nothing to do with our government. It has to do with Gaza and what's going on in another country. You know what I mean? Now, that's something that I find very disturbing, and even taking that into consideration also, I notice a connection between what's taking place there as well as what's going on in countries like England. England now is having like all these riots and stuff taking place over Arab Muslim immigrants killing somebody who or a kid or something like that. Now I can kind of see the correlation with all that stuff, you know what I mean? I just realized that my slideshow stopped. The loop is on. That's not good. So let me go ahead and take care of that real quick, and I will get everything straightened out. But that's the one thing that really sticks out to me. You know what I mean? It's like I see these correlations happening, and it's happening over there. It's happening in all these other countries as well. You can't tell me that this is not organized by groups. I'm not going to say one group. I'm going to say multiple groups, and these groups aren't grounded to one nation. I think that these are globalist groups that are setting up this propaganda to cause this type of situation, because it's happening in more than one place. It's not just happening here in the United States, and it's not just happening in England. It's happening everywhere. France is even having issues, and I know that you have the National Socialist, and then you have the labor parties that are the actual freaking socialists, globalist kind of groups. And I think there are two opposing forces, and they're global. They're not national. They're not just about like the United States or England. They're about all of it, and they're pushing their agendas, and it's bleeding into the United States and becoming a part of us. And it's been here for a while. I'm not saying that it's something that's new, but these are things that I'm noticing. I honestly could not say that the Conservative Party here in the United States was actually the Conservative Party anymore, or even considered conservative. I would consider them more of a National Socialist group than what I would an actual conservative party. The same thing goes for the conservatives over in the UK. There is absolutely no evidence showing that these people are conservative at all. To me, I think that that's what they are. They're National Socialists, and they're pushing a racist agenda. And not only are they involved in it, but you have their opposition, which is generally they're socialists, you know what I mean, the labor, and these are the ones who are latching on to pushing or bringing immigrants into these countries and opening borders and all of that stuff, because they believe in globalization. And I mentioned this before, where I know, for me, I know what the real issues are when it comes to all this stuff. It's about socialism. Socialism has always been and always will be the problems that have been taking place for the last 100 years. Okay? And don't think that freaking uh, groups aren't socialist just because they aren't talking about hugging trees and shit like that. Okay? Socialism has very little to do with that. Those are just ways of them being able to acquire more power. Um, and it's all about workers, and it's all about freaking social organization. It's about freaking regulation, things of that nature. It's unionization, all of it. That's what these people are about. They're not about the individual. They don't care about your rights. They don't care about your personal individual rights. They care about the socialist agenda, and they care about the group as a whole. And if you have to be sacrificed, they will sacrifice you for the greater good. And that's the way they feel, and that's the way they are. And I think that these are the people that are causing the majority of the problems in our country and in the world today. And that's just the way I feel about it, you know. Now, when I bring all that up, I also want to talk about this thing with the protesters. I want to get back to that, okay? Now, the protesters outside of the DNC, they did knock down barriers, and they were actually protesting against the occupation of Gaza. Now, on the brighter side, the police did de-escalate the situation without any violence. There were no chemicals involved. It was pretty well de-escalated, and everything was all right. There was nothing crazy about it. In the media, you'll hear them talking about this overwhelming protest. And the truth of the matter is what I found out was not as many people showed up as what was expected. They were expecting like 20,000 protesters, and they didn't get even close to that many. This was supposed to be a big event. That didn't happen. As a matter of fact, I read too that they had 5 people who were scheduled and approved by the city to like give a speech on the podium, and they never even showed up to do the speeches. Not one speaker showed up for the protest to give a speech. So that should give you kind of an idea of what's going on there, you know. And like I said, you know, the media blew it up to where people thought that there was going to be this huge big ordeal that this huge big ordeal did take place, but it wasn't as big as what everybody did the media made it out to be, is what I'm saying, you know. Now, the protesters did have a harsh chants that were aimed towards Biden and Kamala, and that was about it. I believe that they felt like they were being let down by Biden because of promises, I guess, that he had made, and nobody, from everything that I've seen, nobody in the Democratic Party except for people who are part of the institution likes Kamala Harris, period. You know what I mean? Nobody likes her. And the thing that I noticed when I was reading through this article from AP was the people that were being talked about. You know, social organizations were involved with these protesters. Okay, there was a person that was there by the name of Taylor Cook, and she was pro-Palestinian. Now, she was a organizer with the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. You know, Freedom Road Socialist Organization. Boom, point blank, right there tells you. It's a socialist organization. That's the name of the frickin' organization, the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. And she was there. Now, this is the thing that gets me. She traveled to Chicago, to the Chicago DNC protest, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. All right. Now, this goes back to a lot of stuff that I was wanting to talk about when it comes to one hand washing the other. I encountered this back whenever I got involved. I was naive and I got involved with an supposed effort to get money out of elections. Okay, which to me, I still believe that would be a good move, is to take PAC money and get it out of freaking elections so that politicians can do their job and not have to, and not get paid PAC money in order to freaking do their jobs. You know what I mean? Now, this woman came with this freaking organization and traveled all the way from Atlanta, Georgia to Chicago to freaking protest at this DNC. Alright, there was another protester named Medea Benjamin, okay, another pro-Palestinian, who traveled to Chicago from Washington, D.C. Okay, she was with a woman's group of protesters. Then you had another one in the article that went by Cornel West, another pro-Palestinian, and he was part of the independent presidential. He was, or he is, an independent presidential candidate. So what happened is this guy ends up getting there. You have these people coming from these social organizations, and he addresses the crowd. All right, and he addresses the crowd, and they were giving him cheers and everything like you wouldn't believe. Okay, now, whenever I was doing this thing about trying to get money out of elections, the one thing that really got me was with Lightfoot. She's I believe now she's the freaking mayor of Chicago, but at the time she was involved with this organization, and the group I was with was called the Wolf Pack, and they were involved with the Young Turks. Okay, and yeah, I know I'm not a big fan of the Young Turks. Don't get me wrong about that, but I did want to get involved with it, so I helped out with trying to get people to go and call their congressman and tell them that they wanted this resolution to pass so that freaking we could get PAC money and stuff like that out of politics here in the state of Illinois. And she said that she would be involved in it and everything, but in order for her to do that, people who were involved with the Wolfpack had to freaking show up for her rallies and cheer her on. Okay, it was one hand washing the other. If you want me to do this, then you're going to have to do that. You know what I mean? She couldn't do it out of the kindness of her own heart because she felt that it was the right thing to do. Instead, she freaking had to negotiate and say, well, okay, if you want me to do this, then you're going to have to do that. And I found that as corrupt as taking the PAC money, you know what I mean? And that's what these people do. With these people that I just mentioned who traveled all the way to Chicago to do this protest. One came from Atlanta, Georgia. One came from Washington, D.C. You know, and of course, a supposed independent presidential candidate shows up to give a speech, and everybody cheers him on. You know. And it goes even farther than that. Okay, it's not just pro-Palestinians. You also have other groups that were involved. The pro-Israel had the co-founder of Chicago's Jewish Alliance out there. Now, he was out there with 40 other pro-Israel supporters, and they were walking around and protesting during the rally, waving Israeli flags, and that was just to make their presence known. You know what I mean? Now, with them, they actually had like 20 police officers on bicycles following them around to make sure that they were safe. You know what I mean? So you've got another uh, another socialist organization that's there on top of these pro-Palestinian socialist organizations, and they're all sitting there swarming around one another, and they're causing these issues. You know what I mean? And this is what it goes down to. This is what I'm talking about. You know. Now, you also have to understand too that he wasn't the only one there. Okay. He wasn't the only one there. That Cornel West, the pro-Palestinian guy who was an independent presidential candidate, he wasn't the only one there. Jill Stein was also there. Now, if you remember Jill Stein, she's the one that ran for president previously. Okay, she's what they call a perennial presidential candidate, and she was for the Green Party. She was there as well, you know, and lo and behold, she had the Poor People's Army, who traveled all the way from Philadelphia. They're a Philadelphia-based organization, and they have absolutely nothing to do with the Palestinians or Israel or anything of that nature. Okay, and what they advocate for is for economic justice. Okay. Now, they set up at Humboldt Park on the city's west side, and then they marched 3 miles to the United Center to join the rest of the protesters. Okay. Now, this group had absolutely nothing to do with Palestinians or Israel. They have to do with economic justice, and this goes into what I was talking about before. One hand washes the other. Okay. Even though they have nothing to do with one another, they're showing up to frickin' support this other group, because when they have a protest, these other groups are going to show up for them. So it's a matter of you wash my hand, I wash your hand. You know, if you're somebody who supports, you know, Black Lives Matter, and you're going to this protest and all of these people are around you who are homosexual, the reason why they're there isn't because they support Black Lives Matter. It's because they are doing a favor for Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter did a favor for them, or they're going to in the future. And that's how this stuff works. It's you wash, or I wash your hands, you wash mine, kind of thing. And I think that is probably the worst part about it, you know. And these people are being bussed in from different parts of the country, from all over the place. I've heard rumors that they're even being paid to do what they're doing, you know, so I don't know for sure if that's true or not, but I have heard that's taking place. They're getting paid to go out to these places and protest for these organizations. So that's basically the deal with the DNC. Now with Kamala Harris, I do want to mention Black Lives Matter again. Now, I mentioned it before on a show here previously about Black Lives Matter voters refusing to support Kamala Harris, and I found out the reason behind that. Okay. Now, I actually agree with this for a certain reason. Why they don't want to support her is because the Black Lives Matter voters are calling into question Harris's candidacy in the process by which she was nominated. All right. Now, I mentioned this previously, and it seems odd to me. It seems like it was a fix, you know what I mean? And the Democratic Party is notorious for this because they did it with Bernie Sanders. They literally ripped him off on his chance to run for president when it was Hillary Clinton, I believe. And, Bernie Sanders just turned a blind eye, shut his mouth, gave all of his frickin' voters money over to the Democratic Party, pissed every single one of them off, and it was okay for him. He just went along with it, follow the leader kind of thing. And the thing that this thing with Kamala Harris looks like it's a setup. You know what I mean? What was it? The month before Biden goes to the primaries, he drops out of the race. There's not any significant amount of time for any kind of primary to take place for the Democratic Party. Okay, he's incumbent. That means no primary race was ever put into place. Okay, and I believe that it was set up that way on purpose. They knew what was happening with Biden, and they set it up to where frickin' they could avoid having to do a primary to see who's going to run, because they wanted Kamala to be the person running for president. I do believe that, the Black Lives Matter called for like a virtual snap primary across the country prior to the DNC, and apparently that didn't happen, you see. And I could see where they're coming from with that, because I do relate to that. I thought something was really suspicious about this whole setup, like it's a fix, you know what I mean? And their whole take on it, they wanted to they wanted it to either be determined if the process was people powered, or if it was a decision that was decided by the party delegates, the people who freaking are in office. And to me it seems like it was planned, orchestrated that way, because they knew that they had to find somebody, and they had to find somebody quick to take Biden's place, because I'm just going according to what has been presented, that it was that he's getting old and he's not in a good place mentally right now, you know what I mean? And that's all I'm going for. I'm not trying to come up with any of these conspiracies or anything of that nature. I'm just going off of that, because that is what appears to be happening at the moment. But I will say, I do think that this was fixed to where she would become the person who runs for president for the Democratic Party. So it does seem that way to me. Now, I've been also hearing people talk about radicalism, and they keep comparing Kamala Harris to being a radical. And that's something that I want to point out again, because I don't think people realize that Kamala Harris is not a radical. She is not. She's far worse than a radical. Okay? Now, being a radical is an actual thing. Okay? Just like being a classic liberal, or a liberal, or being a conservative, or being a freaking liberal. It's an actual thing. Now, conservatism, if you go according to traditional conservatism, they refer to radicalism as excessive individualism. And individualism is something that classical liberals believe in. They believe in the rights of the individual. The United States was founded because of classical liberalism. We believe in in small government, and we also support, uh, small government and the rights of the individual. Okay. Now, conservatism refers to radicals as believing into excessive individualism, where we believe into the rights of the individual. Radicals are really, really excessive in their rights for the individual. Like you're hearing about transgender bathrooms and shit like that. That's excessive individualism. That is radicalism. Now, if you notice with Kamala Harris, she's avoiding those subjects. Okay, Black Lives Matter wanted to abolish the police forces. Okay, which I'm not saying I agree with it or if I disagree with it. I, but Kamala Harris at one point was saying that she agreed with it, but then she shied away from it. She stopped talking about it. So that's another reason why Black Lives Matter has an issue with Kamala Harris. She likes to say things in order to freaking get where she needs to go in life. You know what I mean? But other than that, she has no loyalty to these people whatsoever. All right, and that's kind of dangerous when you think about it. Now, that's a part of radicalism, excessive individualism, which she doesn't actually portray. All right. Now, radicals support excessive individualism, but they also support. Now, see, with classical liberalism, they support small government, like I said. All right, and they also support the rights of the individual, which radicalism, they support the rights of the individual too, but they don't believe in small government. Now, the radicals, they support big government. They love regulations. They love referendums, things of that nature. They love it to death. They love big government. That's where classical liberalism and radicals split, you know what I mean? So radicals would literally be the far left group for classic liberals. That's basically the best way of explaining it and everything, and making it to where it makes more sense, you know. Now, with Kamala Harrison, she definitely does support big government, but you also have to understand she has no regard whatsoever when it comes to the rights of the individual. With her track record in California, it shows that she has done more harm to people who freaking could have possibly been innocent of crimes, but were still in prison, than what she ever did any good. She made a statement about helping some 16-year-old kid get out of prison when he was found when evidence proved that he was innocent of the charges. They mentioned that, but they failed to mention the other ones that she was real hard on. Like, there was a guy that was could have been released from death row in California because of DNA tests that could have cleared him of all charges, and she refused to allow that DNA evidence to be admitted into the case, you know, and that guy, if he's not dead already, is still sitting on death row in California, and she still refuses to take responsibility for that. She's been known for doing that. The thing about it too, it comes down to California. People have a really big misconception of California and the attitudes that go on there, you know. And this is why I wanted to bring up the next topic that I have, because it's very important. It kind of explains to you what's going on in California, the truth behind it all. when you watch TV and you see California on television, you see the beautiful beach, the Baywatch girls, you see all the chicks in bikinis, and you see all these cool, happy, fun people at Melrose Place and 90210, and everybody's going down to the pier and fishing and cool stuff like that. But that's not how it happens. Before they take and they do the shots and the scenes that go into that television show, they have to clear off all the homeless bums from Santa Monica Pier, because before you go into Santa Monica Pier, freaking there's a whole shitload of bums that are just lined up on benches and in the grass next to the street before you get out and go even up to the pier. So you have to walk over homeless bums laying on the sand and shit like that. So they have to clear all that out. All right, and it's not pretty. The way they treat their homeless is appalling. They have complete disregard for the homeless. They have been trying repeatedly to push the homeless into the freaking Los Angeles River. That's just my point of view. And I'm telling you this from experience, because I did spend a good amount of time homeless in Los Angeles, and I can tell you now, they didn't treat homeless people very well. People who were homeless, when I was there, it felt like freaking I was on the streets and I was alone, and there was a demon, floating in the air, and he was out to get me. And there was nobody I could run to. I couldn't count on the police for help. And I was basically on my own. I had, it was a very, very, it was a very scary experience. After a while, you go numb, you know what I mean? And the fear no longer affects you. That's the best way to explain it. It becomes that everyday way of life there. But if you're homeless and you're on the streets of Los Angeles, and I'm talking about LA County, I'm not just talking about freaking, LA, because there is the entire county of LA, which goes from Long Beach and all the way up to Santa Monica to freaking downtown Skid Row, everywhere, But all of it. It's basically that way. You have to be careful. It's not a safe place to be when you're on the streets, and you can really tell the atmosphere of Los Angeles when you're in that situation, because it just blows your mind. It wakes you up to a reality that you really was never aware of before, and that's what it did for me. These people do not care. They talk about all these great things about the environment and freaking all of this shit, and energy and saving energy and all this crap. Put up a solar panel kind of shit. You know what I mean? But the truth of the matter is they do not care. They do not care about themselves. They do not care about other people. Actually, I take that back. They care about themselves, and they don't give a damn about anybody else. That's how bad it is in California. You go on vacation, you leave on probation kind of situation, it's really, really, really horrible. So when I get back, what I want to do, I'm going to put some more music on, and what I want to do is, when I come back, I want to start talking about something that we brought up on Jeffy Ryder's show a little while back, and my brother's been talking about it too, because I mentioned it to him, but it's kind of something that goes deeper into this whole thing with LA and with California and the way things are there. I'm going to discuss the SIS. And the SIS is a special investigation section in Los Angeles, and it's nicknamed the Death Squad. Okay, so it is, I'm at 149 1 hour and 49 minutes. I'm going to put some music on. I'm going to get some coffee made because I can't do another hour without coffee. And when I come back, I am going to go ahead and get into that topic, and um, we will finish off this with the last hour the of the show, and will be concerning the SIS. It's something that I really should have been talking about already. Um, the I think that the topic was mentioned like about 3 weeks ago. So I mean, and it's something that I really did want to get into, but I just didn't do it, and I really should have. So I apologize about that, and I'm going to go ahead and give you guys some piano music or some nice relaxing opera music. What do you think about that? So let's see what this does for you. Alright, I am back. I was kind of nervous. I didn't know for sure if I unmuted that media source or not. But I am back. I'm going to switch this back over to my uh, original setup. Well, that way we can get that going for you guys. Now, like I said, I am going to go into uh, the topic of the SIS so that we can kind of get a little bit of an idea of what California is like, particularly LA. You know, and this has to do with people who are involved with law enforcement the within California, just period. I mean, there's no other way of actually saying it, and I think this is probably the best way to really explain it when you start talking about groups like this. Now, understand too that there is no other form of, or no other type of law enforcement that we know of all across the United States. This group is set up specifically in LA, and as a matter of fact, people within LAPD themselves don't like the SIS. They have very negative reviews of this organization, and but they seem to be there. You know what I mean? Now the SIS stands for Special Investigation Section. Like I said earlier, it's nicknamed the Death Squad. That's how bad they are. Now they're a tactical. They're a tactical detective and surveillance unit from the LAPD, and they were formed in 1965. Now, when they were formed, they were supposed to be a stakeout unit, okay, and they were referred to as what Los Angeles considered them as professional witnesses, okay. That in itself is pretty corrupt. This is where I start talking. I've been talking before about the laws being manipulated, alright? And they did this all through the 20th century. They just allowed one thing to happen and another one and then another one until finally it became a landslide, and the police force was able to get away with more than what they were supposed to, you know. And this professional witness thing is a good example of it. Now, their responsibilities were to produce irrefutable evidence, and the reason or the way that they did it was they did it by watching professional criminals covertly, and they would watch them break a law, and they would let them go through with the law, and then they would arrest them after freaking the law was committed. And this had to do with all kinds of laws that were being broken. Like one scene out of a movie showed, this is just a movie, so it could be fictional, but it showed an instance where they watched a woman being raped and they allowed it to happen so that they could bust them for rape after it happened, you know. And like I said, this came out of Hollywood, so there's no evidence that this actually happened or not. But this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. They would allow these people to go in and rob stores. They would allow them to rob banks. They would allow them to commit the crime so that they could get irrefutable proof that they committed the crime. So, and then they would bust them after they did it, you know. And this is what they did. And they started doing this in 1965, and they've been doing it all the way up until today. They're still running this organization, okay? And these are the kind of things that go on in California. They are very, very shifty, and they do underhanded things, and this is one of the things that they committed. This group eventually started to try to or they eventually started to detain the criminals while they were committing the crime or before they committed the crime, after they were exposed to a freaking what do they call them? That it was a magazine did a freaking article on them basically. The Los Angeles Times, I believe, is who did it, and they ended up, and that was in 1988 when they actually, it was an expose. That's what it was. The Los Angeles Times in 1988 exposed the SIS in an expose. That's when they began to apprehend criminals during and before the crimes were committed. Okay? Now, all the way from 1965 to 1988, before they were exposed, they were allowing them to commit the crime so that they could freaking come in, arrest them, and say, we've got proof that you did it. Here's what you did. Here's the witnesses. And they would go into court and say, yes, I'm an officer of the law and I witnessed them do this. You know. So entrapment became legal in the eyes of Los Angeles. And to this day, they still get away with it. They still get away with entrapping criminals before they do it. And don't get me wrong, man. You know, if a person commits a crime, they should be convicted of it. But there's a limit to justice. And when you cross that line, you're no longer serving the justice system. You're serving something else that's criminal. You know what I mean? That's just how I feel about it. I also feel that I would rather have 5 guilty men go free rather than 1 innocent man go be charged with a crime that he didn't commit, you know. A lot of people have their opinions about that, and I don't give a shit what they think, you know what I mean. That's how I feel. If a person is innocent, they should be freaking released. There should be no innocent person being held in prison or in jail if they didn't commit the crime, and that's just how I feel about it, you know. And I'm not going to change my opinions on that at all. It's just not going to happen whatsoever. So the SIS, just so you know, the SIS has killed over 50 people, or they had killed over 50 people by 1999. Now, take this into consideration. 50 people from 1965 until 1999. That was their death toll. Now, the entire LAPD count was only 36. Okay? So, freaking, they killed like 14 more people than what the entire freaking LAPD freaking killed from 1965 until 1999. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that they've been doing. They are literally a hit squad. They go out and they freaking kill people. And that's their business. Their usual MO is they will allow them to commit the crime, and then they will wait for them to leave the crime scene. And they'll catch them in a place like at a McDonald's parking lot, getting back into their car, and they'll cut their car off so that they can't freaking leave. The SIS will get out of their vehicles, surround the car, and then literally just blow the shit out of them. They'll freaking empty their weapons into them. Doesn't matter if they show their weapons or not. You know, they'll say that they had a weapon on them, but in some of the cases that wasn't the case in some of the situations. Okay. Now, before I go any further, I also want to mention too that according to what's been said, no casualties have been claimed for civilians, people who weren't either the suspected criminals or, well, there actually was people who died in the SIS. One was accidentally shot by another person that was a member of the SIS. I believe it was with a sawed-off shotgun. He walked into the frickin' to the fire, the guy's sight and ended up getting shot. And they were chasing him in a car garage. But that was one death that I know of. Now, the SIS has to this point had no. There's been no claims of a civilian that hasn't been or has been killed from these incidents. But you also have to take into consideration that California, to this day, from 1965 until now, has refused to allow access to any of the files concerning the SIS to the public. Okay, it's still classified information. Nobody can gain access to that in the public. So you don't know for sure if that's true or not. It's concealed. So we're basically going off of freaking information that's gathered by journalists, investigators, and things of that nature, and hearsay from police officers and witnesses and stuff, like that. This isn't official documentation saying that, making that claim, other than the fact that they're saying it too. So, but how can you prove that they're lying? That's all I got to say about it. So the SIS was said to have an annual budget of $2 million in 1998. That's approximately $3.7 million in 2023. That's last year. So, that's quite a bit of money, though much more is reportedly spent to defend them in court. So the majority of their money is being spent on defending the police officers when they have to show up for court. And the unit averages about 45 arrests per year. And I've heard too that a lot of the people that they survey, they do it for an excessive amount of time. And a lot of the time when they survey people, it turns out that the person that they're surveying aren't even criminals, and they go far beyond like the borders of LA. They'll go into other areas of California and sometimes out of state surveying these people. They've been known to train special units like frickin' the Delta Force and groups like that in the past when it comes to surveillance. So, I mean, these people, their business, and they don't just operate within the confines of California. They expand outwards to other areas as well. So these people are pretty shady. They've got high people in high places that are supporting them. And this has been going on for quite a long time too. Like I said, 1965. I did take some notes on this, which I think is important. Now, one of the SIS's most high-profile incidences was a shootout in Sunland to Junga on February the 12th, 1990. The SIS had been surveilling a group of 4 suspects wanted for robbing McDonald's restaurant in northwest Los Angeles, and was standing by to catch the suspects as they were robbing a McDonald's. So as they were robbing a McDonald's in Sunland, they were standing by waiting to catch them. Okay. Now, when the suspects left the restaurant, SIS detectives blocked their car and opened fire after reportedly seeing a gun. All right, this is one of the incidences that are mentioned in the motives. This is their signature. They surround the car, and then they just started freaking shooting into the vehicle. And afterwards, they said that they seen a gun. You know what I mean? Now, the SIS detectives fired 24 shotgun rounds and 11 bullets at the suspects, who fired none in return. So they didn't fire one single bullet. and the SIS detectives fired 25 shotgun rounds and 11 bullets. Okay. Now, 3 of the suspects were killed, while 1 suspect was seriously injured and taken into custody. Okay, the suspects were later found to have used pellet guns that were stashed in their car's trunk before detectives confronted them. So these pellet guns were actually in the trunk, and that's what they were using to commit the crime. Okay, and these police detectives surrounded their vehicle with these freaking shotguns and this gun, and just opened up on them and fired on them, and then claimed they had a freaking gun after they did it. So I guarantee you that was pretty messed up, having to explain to them, well, we found these pellet guns in the trunk of the car of the suspects that you claim who had weapons ready to shoot you. How did they end up in the trunk instead of up in the front where they were supposed to be, So, LAPD and federal investigations did not find any wrongdoing, okay? A civil lawsuit ordered the detectives and then Chief Daryl Gates to pay $44,000 to the families of the dead suspects, but the fee was ultimately paid by the city government. So the city government ended up paying the fees instead of frickin' the chief and the detectives. So they sprung for him, they sprung with taxpayers' money to pay for these murderers to get off scot-free, even with a civil lawsuit. That's the kind of corruption that goes on in California, guys. This is the kind of stuff that I was talking about. That I should have done this a lot sooner, but this is the kind of atmosphere that Kamala Harris is involved in. She was a prosecuting attorney, and this is the kind of law that she freaking is a part of. She or has her track record of how she treats freaking inmates who could possibly be innocent, all of that. And then you have stuff like this going on within the police force. This is California. This is the stuff that goes on there. It's not pretty. It's not great. It's not freaking everything in the United States, Everybody in California has this mentality that the rest of the United States needs to act like them, and that we are wrong and everything in California is right. And that's the mentality they have. They don't see themselves as a part of the United States. They see us as a part of California, and that we should do like they do. And everything that you see when it comes to them, when it comes to entertainment and the media, is just pretend. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that takes place there. These are horrible, horrible people doing horrible, horrible things. Okay. Now, 4 more suspects were killed across 3 shootings between 1995 and 1997. Which prompted federal prosecutors to conduct another investigation into the SIS potential civil rights potential civil rights violations. One shooting in 1997, when a bystander mistaken for a robber had his entire upper leg destroyed by a shotgun blast from an SIS detective. This led to a federal civil rights lawsuit. Another shooting in 1999 happened when SIS detectives shot and killed 2 unarmed robbers running from them. This led to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, launching an investigation on the unit again. Now in 2010, SIS detectives shot and killed a Los Angeles Unified School District employee who was being surveilled for connections to a series of check cashing business robberies. After he pointed a handgun at them while surrounded. Now, in 2013, Chief Charles Beck permitted another FBI investigation into the SIS and SWAT over allegations that members of the units were illegally selling their handguns. Now, in 2018, a lawsuit was filed against the LAPD again, a year after SIS detectives shot and killed the Penny Pincher Bandit, who was wanted for a series of robberies. The lawsuit filed by the suspect's family argued the use of lethal force was unnecessary and suggested that the gun he used in his robberies may have not have been real. Okay, so these are the kind of things that are going on. You know, civilians are getting their legs freaking destroyed and shit, stuff of that nature. Now, what I did hear was injury, but I didn't hear death. You know what I mean? But according to what I've heard, there hasn't been any official deaths from civilians related to the SIS. But that could be, you know, speculation. I don't even know what words to say. There's no proof backing it up that it did happen or it didn't happen. It's just taking the word of these people that this is true, basically. There's no evidence, no papers. This organization's information is confidential. It's classified in the state of California, so nobody gets to see all that good information. Now, I do have a last note about this. The SIS also became the inspiration for the movie Extreme Justice. It starred Lou Diamond Phillips, and it was directed by Mark L. Lester in 1993. A lot of the scenes that are in that movie are just speculation. That movie brings up the SIS, and it goes really into the extremes of it, like they were actually inducted into this organization as a hit squad. And that I just want to point out that there is evidence that is going on, in my opinion, but there's no real evidence. There's no concrete evidence that these people are a hit squad. That's job is to go out and kill criminals. You know what I mean? Now, I've seen stories about this that suggests that could be the truth, but that doesn't make it the truth. You know what I mean? So keep that in mind whenever you think about this stuff. You know, and I wanted to bring this up because, you know, this is the kind of justice and the kind of law that Kamala Harris has been a part of. Now, the SIS, yes, it has gone on a lot longer than what Kamala Harris was has even been on this planet, you know what I mean? She wasn't even born when this organization started. But in her career, she must have known about it, you know? And I find that appalling that people can go and they can live this kind of life with these kind of jobs, knowing what's going on. She was Attorney General, for goodness sakes, you know what I mean? She knew that this stuff was happening. There's a lot of people in California that know this stuff is happening, and they're a part of the freaking criminal system, and they just sit and allow it. And if you believe that she's a radical, and you believe that she's going to freaking step in and give all these rights to groups like Black Lives Matter and freaking groups of that nature, it's just not going to happen. All right. Now, don't get me wrong either. I'm trying to be as biased as I can about this because I'm trying to be as unbiased about this as I can. I'm sorry, not biased. You know, I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm a conservative Republican or freaking some liberal freaking socialist. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to tell you a story the best way I know how, because this is what's happening. You know, it's just like with the whole Palestine thing and Israel. You know, I'm not trying to say that I support Israel. I'm not trying to say that I support Palestine. You know, my issue is with the people who are freaking being harmed. You know, not by the groups of people who are doing these atrocities. I don't support them. I think that freaking the stuff that's happening over in Israel and Gaza needs to stop. It needs to stop immediately. I also agree that it needs to stop in Ukraine too. You know, I don't believe that Russia's fully at fault. I believe that this is a proxy war that's being led by the United States. We got caught with our fingers in the cookie jar, and now the Ukrainians are the ones who are paying for it. And it's because of a puppet president who decided he was going to be underhanded and negotiate with the EU and the UN so that freaking him and his country could make shitloads of money, you know, knowing damn well that this was going to instigate war with Russia, you know. That was one of the reasons why Obama wanted to have feet on the ground in Eastern Europe before he left office. He didn't think that frickin' Trump was actually going to make it as president. So he was planning on shipping troops over there before all that happened. So when Trump got into office the first time, he ruined a lot of plans. This stuff was planned. It was bound to happen. You can bet your bottom dollar on that. It just seems to me insane that Biden gets into office and all of a sudden hell breaks loose. You know, there's wars all over the world, and of course we've got to be involved in it. And I'm not for war. I'm against war. Anybody who's ever served in any war would tell you freaking war is not a beautiful, honorable thing. It's a horrible experience. And the only reason why you go to war is because it's the last resort, you know. And I'm talking about people who are vets who freaking have been there, and people who freaking had died in those wars. You gotta remember them too. Now, when I sobered up in a place that freaking vets went to sober up. And I mentioned some of this last week. And I'm not going to get into that too much, you know, but I was able to be around these people, and I'm going to tell you right now, freaking war is ugly. There's nothing pretty about it. So, with these people who are just so eager to jump into these wars and freaking send troops out to die, that you need to kind of look at that and think for yourself, why are they doing this? Because you just don't freaking just jump into war. Like I said, that's the final solution to the problem. There's solutions before that can be done. Now I understand all of that stuff in Israel started over bombings that Hamas did, but there's a point where you have to ask yourself, is this actually defending themselves and doing what they need to do for their country, or is this just an act of revenge? You know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not pro-Palestinian, I'm not pro-Israeli. I'm just a human being who freaking sees this stuff for what it really is. You know what I mean? I'm not taking sides on it. I refuse to take sides on stuff like that, because that's probably the worst part about it. It's just like the whole thing I was talking about with one hand washing the other. You know, it's crooked, it's wrong. It's not the way a human should be thinking. I shouldn't be agreeing with you because freaking I'm a part of your group. You know what I mean? I should be agreeing with you because freaking I have those freaking beliefs too. And if I don't have those beliefs, I'm not going to freaking agree with you. Period. And there's nothing wrong with me and another person disagreeing on something. You know what I mean? It's perfectly fine. But don't expect me to fall into your crap and listen to your bullshit because you think I should. You know what I mean? Because I'm not going to be that person. I'm not going down that road. And that's just my take on the whole deal. Now, I have covered pretty much everything that I needed to cover on the SIS. That's something that I didn't want to slip by on, you know. Another thing that I did want to bring up about this whole thing with Black Lives Matter is how insane even black Democrats and their opinions have become. You know, like things that black Democrats believed in back in the 80s even aren't even talked about today, you know. Like Gary Webb and the situation that happened with him when they found out that frickin' the government was smuggling drugs and weapons to South America. That right there was a big deal when it came to black Democrats because they wanted an investigation into it and they never got it. And Gary Webb was a journalist who investigated all of this stuff back in the day, back in the 90s, I believe. And he had a paper trail which led to South America, where freaking the United States was going down there with weapons, and they were using the DEA even to do these deals, and in return they would frickin' allow these South Americans to ship frickin' cocaine into the United States. It was actually the cause for the crack epidemic that happened in the 80s, I believe. And Gary Webb tracked it all down, had all the information. He was a journalist working out of LA, and the CIA literally destroyed this man. Literally destroyed his credibility. He lost his jobs. He couldn't get a job anywhere after they were done with him. And he eventually committed suicide. And later, the CIA even admitted to being responsible for pushing him to the point where he wanted to kill himself. You know, this whole story has just vanished. You know, the impact that frickin' drugs during that time period had on the black population was devastating. And you would think that frickin' they would still be pushing for stuff like that, frickin' to be investigated and to be watched over and to have changed, you know. But instead, we have stuff like what Black Lives Matter is going after, you know. The kid frickin' gets shot. There was a riot and everything. Now they wanted to destroy the police force and shit like that, you know. But nobody even wants to talk about, you know, Gary Webb and what his findings were or anything of that nature. It's just a thing of the past. Nobody even talks about it, and that's something that I think that is pretty shameful. And I will say it again before I end this. You know, Kamala Harris is not a radical. She is worse than a radical. She's worse than a conservative. She's worse than a freaking liberal, okay? This woman, if she gets into office, she is going to freaking make the law and the freaking court systems into a nightmare. There's going to be people being brought up on charges that they aren't even guilty of, alright? You're going to see a lot of bad shit happening if this woman becomes president. And just so I can set it clear straight too. I've mentioned the same thing when it comes to frickin' Pence, Vice President Pence. I said the same thing about that man. I did not like him. The moment I heard that he was chosen to be vice president with Donald Trump, I was disgusted by it because I knew his track record from Indiana when he was governor there, and he was horrible. He's the same kind of situation, but in the other party, you know what I mean. This is the kind of man who will cut electricity off in the wintertime for people who can't afford to frickin' pay their bills. And in Indiana, people need frickin' their heat when it's winter because it gets cold. Um, Ask anybody who lives up in Gary, Indiana, if they need frickin' electricity during the winter, and they'll tell you, yeah, you can freeze to death out there. And this is the man who refused to allow people to have food stamps, and he cut off their electricity in the wintertime. You know, and I'm no big proponent for the welfare state. Don't get me wrong on that either. But I can tell you, if a person's hungry, you should give them food stamps. If a person needs frickin' help with electricity, they should frickin' have help with electricity. So I think that people who frickin' don't have that kind of compassion are just soulless people who don't have a care about anybody in the world, and it's all about them and their little world, and it has nothing to do with the rest of the people, you know. And me, I am more about the individual than I am about the group. I don't believe in the group conscious. I don't believe that frickin' I should, do what's better for the group rather than what's better for the individual. I think that the individual is just as important, if not more important, so those are the kind of things that I believe in. And I usually do a good recording to about 2 hours and 40 minutes, 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think I've done a good job. Now I put on music on here that I've created myself. Like I said, I'm not going to put anybody else's music on here because of the issue with copyright infringement. It's been happening with John, and I've known the guy forever, you know what I mean? And I thought that I was the only one having an issue with it until he told me on Discord that his own YouTube channel is getting copyright infringements because of his own music. And I figured it had to do with him starting to put his music on Spotify, so I figured that's what it was. So I went ahead and I mentioned it to him, and he's checking into it, but I think that's probably what the deal is. So he's getting hit by Spotify for his music that he's putting on YouTube too, so it's interesting. So I'm still posting his. Now the reason why I'm saying this stuff again is because I'm actually recording when I'm saying this, so I'm gonna say it. But I'm still posting his stuff in the comment section of Wonderful World of Weirdness, as well as Austin Todd's music. I've been sharing Minds Gaming's tutorials on there that were made by Bob Dub, and you can check those out in the comment section there. If you want to, go to Bob Dub's channel on YouTube and subscribe to her. There's tutorials on how to connect your wallet from MintMe to MetaMask, which is very useful for everybody who is on MintMe. Which, by the way, I should mention that MintMe is another place where I post this stuff, so don't want to forget that. If you guys can always find this stuff on MintMe as well. And I am posting. After this live stream, I'll go through, edit it, clean it up, put an intro and an outro on it, and I will upload it to YouTube and eventually it'll be on X and Rumble. I only live stream on Twitch and Odyssey with it, and that's it when it comes to that. So that's where the downloads will be, if you guys want to check them out. And I always run them through there, and they're always on YouTube because this is the first place where I put everything. So it goes to YouTube first. So with that, I am going to say I'm just tired. It's time to go to bed. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's been a 3-hour stream, and the recording is 2 hours and 43 minutes. So that means I did good. I apologize for any background noise, and also for having to get up and take care of stuff. Like I said, I am taking care of my elderly parents who live with me. So there's times where I have to get up and actually go take care of the situation because my mom isn't really all there. She's kind of senile, so there's times where I have to get up and help her. So I'm sorry about the interruptions when it comes to that stuff, and I hope you guys did enjoy. And with that, I will go ahead and end the stream. You guys have a good night, morning, whatever time of day it is there, and goodbye.